Welcome to Leftover Sunday. Today we have some of the news that we weren't able to cram in some of the other videos about the spec changes, the talent changes, even the add-on pruning, etc. But they are still quite relevant for the next expansion. So some of these changes have already been added in the game and in preparation for the next expansion, although not in the current version of the game, since they have been added in Legion Remix rather than retail. Now, the first addition, which then started to trickle down into other news, perhaps less positive at first glance, was the news about Transmog collection, which you might have already noticed, of course, in Legion Remix, because Blizzard came out with the announcement: fully collecting a class set appearance now unlocks all lower difficulty variants. For example, if you collect all mythic appearances, will automatically unlock also the heroic and normal and raid finder variant, while unlocking heroic would only give you normal and raid finder, and then unlocking a normal will only give you raid finder. And they will also mark eligible sets as such in the set collection UI, so you know if collecting a higher rarity, a higher quality of this tier set will also give you the trickle down obtaining of the other lower difficulty sets. Now, quite importantly, as Blizzard says, this change is retroactive to all legacy content. So if you were to go, for example, right now in game and start looking at some of the tiers you have fully completed in one of the three difficulties, if you log in midnight, you will get the retroactive completion of all of the lower raid difficulty of the tier sets you have completed. Now, there is something worth pointing out with this, is that this is related though to the full completion of a set. So this doesn't have to do with you going into a raid, looting some mythic helm, and then acquiring all of the heroic normal LFR version of that helm. So in the case of this tier, for example, if you collect the mythic version of these pieces, you would not be collecting the LFR normal and heroic version until you have the full set completed. So you're downscaling of your appearances if you loot something of a higher difficulty level will only happen once the tier is complete, rather than piece by piece. But at least you do have now the backwards compatibility of completing a higher difficulty or higher rarity tier set, giving you all of the lower difficulty ones. As Blizzard points out, while we feel the Catalyst has been largely successful in expanding access to powerful seasonal set bonuses, it has also generated friction in its dual use as the primary source of class set appearances for many players, right? This friction has been further exacerbated by loot roll restrictions in situations such as participating in LFR raiding, right? If you think you might just queue up for some LFR to try to get the loot from that difficulty, but you have higher item level in all of your pieces, you won't be able to actually win the rolls in LFR, so it makes it even harder to for example, to obtain those appearances. Now, this change was temporarily sort of pushed back by a different change. This time it doesn't have to do with collecting transmog cosmetic and appearances, but rather with in-game power, because one of the announcements, probably alongside wanting to simplify the game, which has been the mantra recently when it came to both add-ons, removing some of the more powerful add-ons as well as simplifying the specs, which was when it came to your gear. One of the changes is taking this, which is what we have been working with a couple of expansions now, your tracks for different item level brackets. Change, for starters, just change the name, so you no longer have to go along Gilded Crests for mid-track gear and Ruined Crests for hero track gear. They are normalizing the crests. Now mid-gear crests are called mid crests and hero track crests are called hero crests. So first of all, you have the normalizing of the names of those crests, but more importantly, the other change was what Ian the lead game designer for WoW, was saying in this interview.
A hero piece is a hero piece forever, effectively. It only needs one type of crest to upgrade it, is what we were aiming for. Like, some of the problems we were looking at were the tension that players experience, for like, if you're, like many players do, someone who starts off getting, let's say, a lot of hero pieces, later on in a tier expects to get more myth gear. As you get towards those upper end of, you know, hero upgrades, and you need Gilded Crests for them, you're going to often stop using them on hero pieces, hoard them until you have myth pieces later on. That feels awkward all around. Ideally, you should just use the currency, enjoy the upgrade, and not worry that you're making a mistake or falling into a trap. And so what we said, okay, what if it's just a one-to-one mapping of a crest type to a gear upgrade track?
Right. The moment where, for example, even on this character, which was quite high item level throughout the first weeks of this patch, you can see that, for example, you have this ring at 710 at hero track. So before the expansion of the track in this reset, it was at 710 max. So I spent 30 Gilded Crests on a hero track gear. You also have the boots from Soul Hunters, previously 6 out of 6 hero track gear. So another 30 Gilded Crests on a non-mid track piece, and then you had the helmet, which was also 6 out of 6, 710. So another 30 Gilded Crests on a piece of non-mid track gear. So even though, of course, the majority of the Gilded Crests went either on things like crafted items or things like your bigger ticket items being upgraded to max for their power, there were some windows where you were spending Gilded Crests even on hero track gear. Especially some players were more often than not even forced. Because if you can loot, yes, even though Turbo Boost is live, you still have the cap of Gilded Crests every week. So while having only 90 Gilded Crests per week, what happens? What happens if you don't mythic raid, or you happen to simply go in the raid and kill 2, 3, or 4 bosses and get no loot, which is perfectly normal for many players. So you got 0 myth track items from the raid, and then your only hope left now is the vault, which means that at the very best you might get 1 item from the vault, which is going to take less than your 90 Gilded Crests cap every week for you to fully upgrade. And sometimes you're unlucky and you don't even get something usable in your vault, but rather something like a socket that you go and spend on an item. So this is going to make you essentially stockpile your Gilded Crests because you don't have enough source of myth track loot to spend it on. So many players were just going to say, well, at this point I might as well just dump my Gilded Crests on character power, especially if you're in the raid, right? You're trying to push a difficult boss. What's the point in sitting on 180 Gilded Crests as you are trying to defeat, Nexus King, for example? You might as well just spend those Gilded Crests. So Blizzard's idea now is essentially to move from this situation that we have been for the past few seasons into this one. So to just cut off the transition between hero track into mid track, as well as carb track into hero track, and then hero track into mid track. So you cut out the transition where you get the extra slight item level increase at the cost of upgraded crests. And that's where the adjustment made by Blizzard came to be, this extra comment about Blizzard. We have seen the feedback from players about how they hope to continue upgrading the look of class set items by upgrading items to the point that the required crest type changed, because that's the thing. Right now, in-game, the one way to get myth track or, mythic level tier set appearances is to use the upgrade system and take your hero track gear, which is ruined crests required, and use Gilded Crests. Once you push that piece into Gilded Crest category, you earn the mid-track appearance. So players were wondering, hold on a second, but if we are getting rid of the last couple of Gilded Crest upgrades on your hero track gear, are we also going to lose the ability to upgrade the appearance of our hero track gear? So players who don't mythic raid and get only, you know, heroic tier pieces from the raid in heroic difficulty won't be able to upgrade those into myth appearances because they can't spend Gilded Crests on hero track gear anymore. Blizzard is saying now that in Midnight, if you reach the highest level of power within a bracket of upgrade level, you unlock the next tier's appearance. So if you have Carved Crest, which will now be, as we have touched on, will now be renamed to simply Champion Crest. If you get the max level Champion Crest, you upgrade it into Hero. If you get the max level of Hero, you upgrade it automatically into Myth Crest appearance only. Now, as I said, while this might be very good for the collectionists and just the simplicity of upgrading all of your gear as well as obtaining lower difficulty, lower level tier pieces in terms of collectibles and cosmetics and appearances, there is still the question about gearing item level and gearing power, since as we touched on, you still used to see players spending Gilded Crests on hero track gear, and now this will be gone in Midnight. So there is the worry. Actually, it's not even a worry. There is the question mark on how much, how often, how large will the availability of myth track gear be in Midnight for you to be able to spend these Gilded Crests now to be renamed Myth Crests on myth track gear in Midnight. Since if you don't even, right, if you don't even have the opportunity to spend the last 30 crests on a hero track piece to push it to 710 right now, just so you can spend your Gilded Crests, what if you don't get myth track gear for a while? You know, what if you keep doing Mythic Plus, which is enough for you to give you Gilded Crests, but then you loot nothing from the raid for 2 weeks back to back, your vault is absolutely cursed, you don't even get anything usable from the vault, and now you're sitting on 200 plus Gilded Crests you can't even use because you only have hero track gear, and in Midnight, hero track gear lost the last couple of upgrade levels that would have allowed you to spend 15 and 15 Gilded Crests. Now they are gone. So it's an interesting change. So you still have this question on how often you will have room to spend these Gilded Crests in Midnight, now that they are removing the last couple of upgrades from the hero track gear. Now, the other point of this has been, this is however way more commonly appreciated, is the now removal of Valorstones. Valorstones are dead. Valorstones are no longer usable and needed. You will just flat out only require crests only to upgrade your gear. Now, true, Valorstones were useless for the majority of the expansion and season, but they would end up being very frustrating the few times you actually cared about them, which generally speaking is the beginning of the season, because obviously you begin the season, you start upgrading tons of different gear because you have to jump from the previous season to the next one. It's like a 30 item level jump, so you have to go up multiple upgrade tracks, which will start costing you hundreds of different Valorstones. Even if you try to do, for example, things like let's early upgrade this ring or these boots, even though they have the wrong stats, I can still upgrade my best in slot or whatever, my better stat item whenever I loot it. But then upgrading that, even if it is for free with crests, you still have to spend Valorstones anyways. And then for the poor souls who didn't craft a weapon, so you had to completely bypass the cost of Valorstones. You had players having to upgrade weapons for like 800, 1200 Valorstones in one pop. It was very, very annoying to deal with them, and then you kind of forgot about them. You know, after the first 2 weeks of upgrading your character, you just didn't really need them anymore. You were spamming Mythic Plus enough that you just capped Valorstones back up immediately, and then the rate of upgrades on your main character was low enough that Valorstones never become a problem again, and then they come back when you start playing more your alt, because now your alt is in the same situation, and now you're wishing you could send your mains Valorstones, which at that point were capped since you weren't using them anymore, and send them on your alt, but you can't. So you were in the same frustrating situation. It's definitely a good result to get rid of Valorstones in the next expansion. We'll just have to see. We'll just have to see how they will plan out now this upgrade track change coming in midnight, hoping we don't get to be starved of avenues in spending our Gilded Crests, soon to be renamed Myth Crests in midnight. But we still have ways to empower our character with the harder earn crests in the game. But for now though, on this Sunday, this is all we have to go through for the end of this weekend. We're starting the goodbyes as usual by thanking everyone for having watched the video, together with of course everyone else who has been supporting Competitive for free by liking and commenting down below, as well as subscribing to the channel itself. Now, with these things out of the way, thank you guys again for watching. See you guys tomorrow, and in the meantime, 2 days. It's been 2 days of a really hard challenge, which is going okay for now, but it's getting tough.